So welcome to this session. So yeah, I just did a weekend here at Suryavana. So let me know if you can't hear. It's really important, the sound for these classes, I think. Okay. So yeah, I just did a weekend for a group of women actually, which was quite a privilege, to be quite honest. Teaching, it was like over 3 days, Friday night, all day Saturday and Sunday. And it's a sequence of practice, which I was just saying to Maureen, I worked with Sarah Powers like 20 years ago, and it felt like working with a, superstar yogi. And but she was good. She was very good. She's a very inspiring teacher. I don't know what she's up to now. So for that yin practice that I taught over the weekend, I did draw very heavily from her book called Insight Yoga, which is a really great book in terms of looking at yoga, meditation, Buddhist teaching, and then she puts in the Chinese medicine mix. So the sequence we're going to do actually is partly inspired by the sequence which covers the metal and fire elements, which I'm not going to go into this evening, but basically it's the energy channels, the meridians that are in the arms, shoulders, and goes into the head area. So it's sort of upper body. So it's an upper body yin sequence, which I think just on its own level, it's very valuable because a lot of yin practices are orientated towards the pelvis and the legs, between the knees and the lower back, basically. And it's very good for opening up the pelvis, opening up the hips, working the thighs, the inner legs, and so on. But this sequence is going to focus more on the upper back. So it might go into about 1.5 hours. I hope that's going to be okay. Yeah. So because I'm going to add a few things in which are not in the book, as it were. Okay. So to begin with, what I'd like you to have for the sequence is some sort of bolster. I mean, what I've done is put 2 blankets rolled together. So if you've got some kind of thick, ideally it would be a bolster. I left my bolster in the other house, so I've wrapped 2 blankets together. So if you want to just fiddle around to get something like a fairly thick roll, okay? So it's like it's as wide as my palm. Okay, and then it might be helpful to have some sort of yoga bricks, to be quite honest, or also you could use really thick cushions, dense cushions. If you haven't got all this yoga gear, not everybody has loads of yoga gear. I mean, for the yin practice, props, the way I teach it is quite prop heavy. Okay, so we're going to start off with a very gentle pose. So I'd like you to place, like, maybe depending on your bolster, you can place a layer of bricks and then a bolster on top. So I've got 1 layer of bricks, the bolster. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to describe this. So you're going to sit, this is like a prone twist. Some of you would have done this with me before. So what we do is we sit sideways on. It's a bit like if you were sitting side saddle on a bicycle, if you're sitting off to one side. So I've got it doesn't matter which side you do. In this case, I've got my left leg resting on top of the right leg in a fairly relaxed fashion, okay? And then the idea is to turn towards the support. Okay, so I'm going to turn towards the support. I'm going to turn away from the camera. Ideally, you rest your head on turning away from the legs, and then you spread your elbows. Just because of the earphones, I'm going to keep my head centered. But if you prefer with the head centered, that's fine. Or if it's not comfortable on your neck, you can actually look in the same direction as the knees, okay? But I'm going to rest my chin down because of the earphones. And then I'm going to spread the elbows wide. So let me just see, I'm going to have a quick look. This is the thing, we're teaching online. you want to crawl into the screen and see what people are doing, but okay, that's it. Okay, so we're going to spend 3 or 4 minutes on each side. So it really is not a dramatic pose, which is deliberate. So I'm deliberately starting with a very slow pose, a very non-intensive pose, a pose which in theory should feel quite neutral. One of the benefits of having the front of the body in contact with something is it promotes the parasympathetic nervous system. So we were very fortunate on the last teacher training. We had 2 doctors on the course, and one of these doctors was saying that the parasympathetic nervous system, as it were, opens up in the chest area. There's receptors. That's how I understood it. So by bringing some awareness into that area, in this case, bringing the weight of our body onto the bolster, it helps to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the nervous system when it's in a state of calm and rest. Okay, so the sympathetic is when we're in a state of fight or flight. And ideally in all yoga practices, meditation practice, mindfulness practices, we want it to be moving away from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic. There's like an added bonus of this pose. It's one of the few poses where you're in prone, as in facing the floor and twisting. So it's a very mild, should be quite a mild twisting action through the lower body. And the other thing you can look out for is to spread the elbows. So there's really a sense of opening that space between the shoulder blades. Okay, so you really want to open the space between the shoulder blades. So just partly for the benefit of Maureen as well, I'm going to revisit the mindfulness teaching that we share. Okay, so this in a way, ideally it's becoming kind of like second nature. Okay, so we draw very strongly from the Satipatthana teachings, which is one of the suttas of the Pali Canon, one of the teachings supposedly given by the Buddha directly to his disciples, to a group of monks, in fact. And so we're drawing really heavily from that, what are called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. What we've done is simplify down the teaching, or not simplified, but taking an essence of that teaching out and focus really on the body foundation. But we do include the other elements. Okay, so first of all, I'd like you to just get a sense of your whole body, right, from the crown to the soles of the feet, to the fingertips, sense of the whole body in space, and to a certain extent being aware of the space around you as we come into our practice. So we're going to move actually. So I'd like you to ground your palms. So you don't need to disturb yourselves too much. I want you to swing the legs to the other side from all 4s, and then simply drop down into the pose on the opposite side. Okay, spreading out the elbows again. The idea of spreading the elbows is to really bring the chest down towards the support. The head can turn away from the legs, or it can turn in the same direction of the legs if that's easier on your neck spine. And then I'd like you to, the second aspect of mindfulness that we draw on. So first of all is the whole body, second aspect, and we can revisit these again and again during the practice. It's coming into specific areas of your body, noticing if there's a particular part of your body calling your attention. Okay, so in this pose, it's mildly challenging the lower back and the pelvis. You may notice sensations there. It's mildly engaging the neck area. Maybe you notice sensations there. But maybe you've brought with you a particular experience which might be dominating your experience. So give your attention to whatever is dominant, a specific area, with a sense of kindness, accepting, embracing, whatever's happening. One of the, as it were, the propositions of our yoga meditation practices, we allow whatever to arise fully in our awareness. This is a very powerful practice. So whatever's there, even the unpleasant, the disagreeable, the unwanted, see if you can allow it to be there. At least for the duration of the session. And then, of course, we can go off, distract ourselves with something else. But at least during the practice sessions, if we can move towards our experience. And then bringing in an awareness of your heart center in the sense of your mood. Okay, so I'd just like you to check in with your mood. You could ask yourself how you are. Okay, and then from there, we're going to again ground, moving on to into all fours, very carefully coming up into all fours. So yeah, I'm going to add in a couple of poses now which are not in the original sequence. So these are quite powerful poses actually. So we're going to make a pile of gear. Again, no doubt you've done this with me before. So it can be like 4 bricks or 5 bricks even, and the bolster. And there's 2 positions we're going to take. Okay, so the first one is to place the elbows onto the support, walk your knees back, and then place the head onto the support. So you're aiming to get a kind of shoulder hang, we call this. If you feel like it's dragging too heavily in your lumbar spine, then pivot the pelvis backwards. Because the aim of this pose is to work the upper back, not the lower back. So you can pivot the pelvis backwards, what we call retrovert the pelvis. So it's not dragging into the lower back area. So this is the first position. My elbows, you can have them shoulder width or wider than the shoulders or narrower than the shoulders. It really is up to you. And then the knees, you can separate slightly as well. And it's up to you how much you hang into the spine in a general sense. So if it feels okay on your lumbar, you can let the belly hang down. But if, as I said, as a contraindication, if it feels like it drags too strongly on your lumbar, draw your belly in, roll the pelvis back. And we're aiming to work around the underside of the arms, the armpit area. You'll also notice it pulling on around the shoulder and the upper back. Okay. Again, it's a symmetric pose. We're going to do 3 or 4 minutes rather than the asymmetric poses, which we're aiming to do equal amount of time on each side in the practice, more or less. So just coming through these 5 aspects of awareness. So we've seen, first of all, the whole body. Then we're coming into the specific sensations, specific areas. So maybe this pose, you're really noticing the shoulders. So see if you can really connect with those sensations. And then we've opened up to a certain extent to our sense of our mood, sense of our state of mind, or the emotions. And then we can open up to, it's a really important quality in our experience to open up to, is this quality that everything is changing. So there's nothing fixed, there's nothing static, everything's flowing, everything's transforming. This is the very kind of outwardly Buddhist teaching on impermanence. Okay, from here on an inhale, carefully coming up, so you can walk, you can shift your way up and then walk your knees back. And then if it's okay to sit on the feet, just sit back on your feet for a moment and rest the arms in the lap. Rest the hands in the lap and just pause, okay? So with the yin practice, we're deliberately slowing everything down, including the transitions. It's not wise, really, because of the amount of time we're spending in each pose. They're quite powerful adjustments on the body. It's not wise to do quick movements in and out of a yin pose. So you want to be moving gently in and out of the poses, and even having a pause between poses to see the effect. Okay, so we'll come back in. Again, positioning your elbows. You can have the arms lengthened out. Somebody was asking about that the weekend. You can have, I personally prefer having the palms together with the hands going up. Feels a bit more stable, but if you prefer to extend your arms out, you can. The idea now is to let the head hang through the arms. So this is going to pull more strongly on the shoulder structures. Okay, so actually, curiously, it feels better to extend the arms out with this version. So my head is hanging down. My knees are slightly forwards of the hips, so I've not got a lot of weight being thrown forward. Some weight is going back. The same contraindications. If it suits you more to draw the belly in, so you're not hanging so strongly into the lumbar, we'll draw the belly in, roll the pelvis back. And if it's too strong on your neck, which it could be, then do move the head back onto the support. Okay. So it's a really powerful pose, which we're doing at the beginning of the sequence. You know, you could argue that it'd be better to do it a bit later on once we've kind of worked up into the sequence, but I wanted to try it this way. So one of the benefits you could say of a strong pose is that the sensations are very definite, which gives you something to anchor your attention into. So if we're staying too long on the poses, do feel free to come out as well. There's no obligation to stay there as long as we are doing. Once again, when you're ready, very carefully swinging up, bringing your knees forwards, and take a pause into sitting on the feet. If that's not okay, sitting on the feet, then you could sit cross-legged, cross legs, and being aware of the experience post pose, the kind of afterflow of sensations, staying connected with the upper back, the chest area, shoulders, the neck. Okay, from here, so this, let me see how easy this is to get across with the camera. So there are various names for this, and I call it, it's like crossed arms. Okay, so it is helpful, I think, for some people to have a bolster. Basically, one of the issues here is that the chest area can feel like there's no room to move into the pose. Okay, I think it's more the case for some people than others, for some women, I should say. So let's play with it and see how we get on. So I'm going to show it without the bolster. So the basic position is you cross the forearms around you as though you're going to do Gurudasana, and then you bring your elbows down and you try and cross the elbows deeply and rest. So this is really strong for the outer shoulders, and then it might be helpful to have something for the head. So I'm letting my weight descend into the outer elbows. I've got my elbows quite high; they're almost underneath the throat area. In fact, you could have it more underneath the chest, but it's going to depend on how that feels, right? So another possibility to create a bit more space for the chest area is to have a bolster where you create a little bit of space basically for the chest area. My arms are underneath the neck area. Hopefully that's making sense. And I just let my weight descend into the outer arms. Okay, so one of the key characteristics that we find with the yin practice is yielding to gravity. So the idea is to really let your weight drop towards the floor, so it's somehow very different from a more active practice where we're often resisting gravity, working against gravity. So it's not a practice which is going to build strength or tone in the body. It's more a practice which is going to create space and a sense of letting go. And it can be really useful. It can liberate actually a lot of energy, unblocking the body. It could be a really useful practice after like a busy day or like a long journey. If you've been running around or driving or whatever. Okay, so being aware which of your arms is on top, you want to wriggle your way out of that. So it may help to lift out. I suggest you come all the way back up onto sitting on the feet and then recross the arms the opposite way and then go back in on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to use the bolster. I'm going to use a little bit of support for the head. You can do it. You don't need any of that equipment, but it depends on your body. If the equipment helps, then go for it. And then releasing into the floor. Again, we're working like the outer shoulders would be like the deltoids on a sort of muscle level. Deltoids to a certain extent, triceps. And then deeper into the shoulder itself. And then one of the benefits which I really appreciate in this pose is that sense of pulling the shoulder blades away from each other, which we get in Gurudasana, classic eagle pose as it's sometimes called, which is lengthening out the rhomboids, right, which draw the shoulder blades together. So see if you can really yield each out breath, sense of releasing. And then, so yeah, that brings us to the fifth mindfulness aspect, which is the breath. So the recommendation is to be aware of the breath. I'm not going to suggest you do any kind of special breath. Just let your body breathe. Become more intimate with this breath. It can be in fact, very pleasurable being aware of the breath. Intimately aware of the breath. So we've got the body, both in a general aspect and specific aspect. We've got an awareness of the emotions, which this practice really allows. We've got awareness that our experience is changing. And then we've got the breath. So I'll let you just follow in your own way any of those aspects of your experience. Okay, carefully coming up. So you can roll out of this. I'm just going to demonstrate. So you roll in the direction of the top arm. So you unwind just so that it's been recorded at least once. Or you can kind of try to wriggle out. It's not necessarily an easy pose to come out of. From there, we're going to come up into sitting again, just for a moment. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you might think, oh, we're not really doing yoga here. We're just lying around in poses and sitting. But it's a really powerful practice. And I think part of the power of the practice comes from, as it were, just doing it, being on your mat and doing the poses. Okay, requires a lot of attention in a sense. Okay, so we're going to move back into the sequence as it was given. You could use a bolster for this next one. Depends on your lower back. Okay, so the pose is called Sphinx pose, which is basically cobra pose or Bhujangasana. So for my body, it really helps to have a little bit more height underneath the forearms. But if you've got sensitivities in the lumbar area, you may just want to come closer to the floor into a low cobra. And the feet you can tuck under or have extended out. You can have your feet separate. And you can engage the legs or not engage the legs. Okay, so many variables. So there's a lot of room to explore. One of the things I do appreciate about this practice, at least the way that I'm doing it, to a certain extent, the way I learned it was there was an emphasis on exploring the pose. So another aspect to explore is how much do I lift the chest? Do I actively lift away from the floor, or do I let the chest drop down? So you might just want to explore those two limits. So if you let your upper body, as it will, collapse down, so it's like you're hanging off your shoulders, that's one possibility. Or you could lift the sternum and lift out of the arms, so you're lifting the chest. So personally, I like a kind of midway position, but you could explore either sagging down or lifting up, or somewhere in between. So this is working to a certain extent around the shoulders and arms. Obviously, we're working into the spine in a general sense, opening the anterior face of the spine, compressing the posterior face. So this can be uncomfortable in terms of compression in the lumbar spine, so be attentive to that. Okay, from there, releasing down. If it's too intense, then stay lower. We're going to take the bolster out of the way. Actually, no, sorry. The bolster, I'd like you to move now down to the waist area, to the pelvis area. So it's underneath the pelvis. And we're going to now take the arms somewhat forward of the shoulders and come up in the same pose, but with straight arms. So it really depends on your flexibility. Some of you want to bring the hands further back. Some of you are going to need to take the hands further forwards. And you can, if you want to include an extension of the neck, you can also look up. So yeah, I quite like to do this from time to time in the yoga practice, just to look up, because it's like somebody said somewhere, if you stop looking up, you lose that ability to look up. So yeah, of course, it's very strong on the neck area looking up, but we're gently engaging the neck spine by doing this. Again, how much do you hang down in the shoulders or lift out of the shoulders? You can play with that. How much do you engage your legs? You can play with that. And this you maybe notice this more, in fact, in the lumbar area than in the upper back. Okay, from there, again, it's a very powerful pose. You come down, you could stay longer. I'd like you to come up now into sitting again, but this time we're going to drop down into child's pose. So allow yourself to come into a simple flexion of the spine, having just done Cobra, 2 versions. Allow your body to relax here, release. Connecting with the breath. See if you can release the shoulders and the hands. Curiously, for some people, child's pose is not that restful. So if that's the case, you could invite your students to sit on the feet. As I say, I prefer that on the whole these days. No idea why. Yeah. So from here, we're going to come into two versions of what's called quarter dog. So I'm going to, hopefully this will work in terms of describing. So the basic position before we come into the versions is all fours. You come into all fours. So I'll try and do my best to illustrate on the camera. I'm going to do the left side. So I'm going to place the left forearm down so it goes across my mat. And then the right forearm I'm going to place forwards. I'm going to turn towards the left. I'm turning towards the screen. My elbows are slightly wider than the shoulders, but you could bring them narrower. My hips are behind the knees, and I'm letting my body hang into the space. So it's similar to the shoulder hang, but this should feel milder. If you don't want to turn the head, you could place the forehead down. That's also a way of practicing. You could even turn the head the opposite direction to the way that I've just said, but I personally prefer turning towards the folded arm side, in this case the left. My knees are slightly wider than the hips and forwards of the hips. So I'm not throwing all my weight into the head area or the shoulder area. So if you wanted a milder pose, you drop your hips back. So in the end, it would become child's pose, right? Very mild indeed, but you would still get some benefit there. So I'm just illustrating that now. I've let my hips drop back to the feet altogether. Okay, and we're looking for sensations around the shoulders, around the shoulder blade, around the armpit area, and just see what happens there. Breathing, surrendering to the floor. Okay, on an inhale, so these poses I don't like to hold for too long, a minute or two. They're quite strong on the shoulders. So as we come into all fours, later take cat-cow. So as you exhale, look back, rolling the pelvis back, and on the inhale, the opposite, roll the pelvis forwards. Take the gaze forwards. Again, this can be a really slow movement. You don't necessarily have to work with the breath, but maybe it helps in this movement. Inhale, you're lengthening the gaze forwards, pivoting the pelvis forwards, and then come back into a neutral spine. So we're going to do the same setup on the opposite side. On the feet, you can also tuck under if you prefer. So right forearm crossing my space, left forearm extending forwards. I'm looking underneath my right shoulder, hips going back behind the knees. Knees can be a bit wider than the hips, so it creates a sense of stability in the pelvis with the weight being thrown towards the upper back. And so I'm just going to have a look again, what's going on. Yeah. For most it's probably a really familiar pose. It seems outrageously simple, but the kind of combined effect of these poses can be really powerful in terms of opening up the shoulder girdle. If it's done carefully with the neck, of course, you always want to be especially careful. The neck, the lower back, and the knees are really vulnerable areas in the body. So you'd be doing any work you do with your neck with a lot of attention to care, particularly noticing the effect after you do the pose. Sometimes you don't always notice during the pose. So do keep a, as it were, track record of what's happening. Next, inhale, we're going to swing up carefully. Come into the cat-cow movement. Exhale, looking back, rolling the pelvis back. Inhale, looking forwards. 2 or 3 cat-cow. And then once again, coming into a neutral spine. So we're going to come into the second version. So I think this is sometimes called thread the needle. I've seen thread the needle called various things in different positions. So now my right arm is going to go over to the left. So I bring the outer right head down to the floor and the right shoulder down to the floor. So I'm just going to show that again. Okay, I'll do it in slow motion. So my right arm goes underneath and I drop down. So it's like I'm dropping down onto my right side on my right shoulder. So that's the first position. My left hand can act as a support. If you want to throw more weight into your right shoulder, you can step your left foot towards your right hand. Yeah, and that'll put more weight into your right shoulder. And then, so maybe it's best to check what I'm doing before you try and do it. You actually can turn and look towards the ceiling and take the left arm up. So it's like it becomes a twist. So really gentle with your neck. So don't try and do the pose and look at the screen at the same time. I'll just describe that change again. So I'm just going to go through the whole thing again because this is important. Okay, so we take the right arm underneath, bring the right shoulder down. If you want more weight to go into the shoulder, you could step your left foot forwards. Then if that feels okay, you turn and you look up. So it introduces, not only have you got flexion in the neck, there's a bit of twisting happening in the upper back. Just again, quite a powerful pose. You could drop your left arm behind you or let it hang out. There's actually a Paul Grilly pose. It's where I learned this one. No doubt he saw it somewhere else. So again, releasing round. So coming out the same way you came in. So first of all, turning towards the floor, dropping, straightening leg, unwinding, and we'll take a cat-cow. So let's do the other side. So we're going to take the left arm out to the right. So you bring the left shoulder down. If you want to throw a bit more weight into the shoulder, then stepping out your right foot. If you can, you could turn towards the ceiling. Breathing there. Really attentive to what's going on in the body, especially around the shoulder and the neck area. Not forcing. So one of the things I was really emphasizing, but I think it's really important with the yin practices, we're not going for like our maximum performance. Okay, so we're working in a sub-maximal fashion. Okay, so you're working well within your capacity because we want to try to promote a sense of letting go. So if you're fighting with the poses, you're just going to create a kind of inattention. So dropping your top arm, dropping the straight leg if you were there with that, carefully unwinding, and coming into, again, the cat-cow. So that was version 1 and 2 of quarter dog. Okay, well, again, we'll rest back onto the feet for a moment. Allow your hands to rest into your lap. And let your shoulders drop down. So that whole area probably feels quite alive now. The upper back, the neck, the shoulders. And then from there, moving on, we're going to sit now. And if we can, we extend both legs out wide. Okay, so this is a pose where it's not so obvious it's about working the upper back, but it does work into that area, okay? Sort of indirectly. I want us to fold the right leg onto itself. So we've still got the thigh bones separating evenly, the femur more or less moving out equally. But you've got your right leg folded, your left leg straight. And then it might be helpful, I should have said this before, get your bolster resting on the straight leg, or have some gear at hand, because it's not going to come that easy for everybody. Okay, so we're going to then turn towards your right leg, which is your folded leg. So you're turning towards that leg now. And then we float the left arm up, and then we float out laterally. So we tip out to the side, your right hand can rest on the right hip, and your arm can come down to the support, or your hand can come to the foot. And then you're gently turning the upper body towards the sky, towards the ceiling. So for a lot of people, the work is felt more strongly in the leg area and the side waist area, but there is a sense of opening the chest. If you want to enhance this pose a little bit more, you take your right arm up and over, so you come more towards the full expression of pose. What else to say? Yeah, so there is one little trick here. So it might be helpful to place your lower arm, hand, underneath the head, so you've got your head supported. And then you could place your other hand on the other side of the head. So it's a sense of opening the chest towards the sky. It has to be said that I'm mainly feeling this personally in my side waist area. So there's an intention to keep the chest broad and open, but yeah, I'm noticing it more on my leg and my side waist area. Sometimes I do wonder about this pose in relation to this sequence, but yeah, I like to include it because I can see there is a connection. There is a connection, even though it's somehow indirect into the upper back area. Okay, very carefully, we take the top arm up, float back up to center. So just have a pause. Like I said, it's very powerful in the side waist area. So that area can be quite a vulnerable area in our bodies. So we're going to switch out to the other side. So my right leg is now going straight, the left is folded. I'm going to turn towards the left leg, which is the folded leg. And I'm going to float my right arm up. So right arm, so I'm opening my right side, and then I'm floating out to the side. So keeping the movements quite light. Maybe the hand comes to the foot, maybe it doesn't. It really doesn't matter. And then you can work with your left arm resting down. I quite like to support the head. Yeah, when the head is supported, there's less stress on the neck. The head is a heavy object. Like, I think it's 4 or 5 kilos, which is, it's a lot, you know, it's like 5 bags of sugar, like kilo bags of sugar. Okay, from there, coming over, if you want, with the top arm. And yeah, you could do this play where the hands come onto the sides of the head. That's only working for me because I'm propping up my lower arm on some support. Yeah, if you've got more flexibility, of course, you can drop lower down, and you can even take hold of the foot with both hands. But it really depends on your flexibility. So I'm working here on a more submaximal fashion. You'll really notice also quite a difference between your right and left sides. Okay, breathing there, connecting with the breath. Where is this pose dominating in your sense experience? Is it the leg? Is it the side body? Is it into the upper back? Whereabouts? With an inhale, we're going to float the top arm up to have a sense of lifting out of the pose. And then I'd like you to simply cross the legs into what we could call Sukhasana, easy pose. And again, just sitting in the vertical, bringing the spine into the vertical axis. Softening the shoulders. Observing the impact of that pose on your body. It's sometimes called, so what they've done, which, in a way is a good thing to do, they've renamed all the poses just to make them distinctive in a yin style practice. So I think this one's called dragonfly, but it's like a half dragonfly with a lateral movement. So this one is called caterpillar, but we know this as Paschimottanasana. So I'd like to extend, what has happened there? I'm still, did I disappear or something? No. Yeah, okay. My screen did something. So I want you to extend your legs forwards. So for this movement, it might be helpful to have a bit of support underneath your hips. One brick, for example, and it might be helpful to have some support for your arms and possibly your head. Okay, so caterpillar, it's Paschimottanasana. So we're going to float the arms up. The feet can be together, they can be separate. We float forwards. And then the idea is to rest. So we're not pulling forwards. The idea is to really try and release the arms. And so I like to support the head. But this is, personally, I don't find that easy, these forward folds. So I'm using quite a lot of props. You could do away with the props if you don't need them. Okay, I tend to use, as I said, a lot of props in the yin yoga to support a sub-maximal practice. So I'm trying to get rid of all the hard edges of the practice. So it's tending towards softer edges, less intensity, less challenge, because we're looking for a sense of relaxation and subtlety in the practice. Okay, that's my angle on it. Breathing here, so I suppose it's good to hold for a few minutes to really allow your body to soften into the forward fold. It's a flexion. We're not pulling with the arms. Really important that the upper body is quiet. There's a sense of releasing the arms from the shoulders. Releasing the head if you can. And we can come into a whole body awareness. We can come into specific awareness of what's going on. So yeah, it's going to be different in everybody's body. I mean, obviously this pose stretches what we call the back side. In yoga, this would be like the west of the body, but traditionally you do yoga towards the sun in the morning. So the back of the body is the west. So I understand that the pose is sometimes called stretching the west. So you're stretching the back of the body. But that might manifest in your body in a different way. Like you might feel it more in the back of the legs, in the hips, in the spine, the upper back. Where do you feel it? try softening, try making a little bit less effort. Yeah, the yin practice is this idea of tending towards the least amount of effort possible. See what happens. Breathing now. Opening up to your sense of your mood, the landscape of your emotions. So there may be more like superficial emotions, more obvious, but then there might be a sense of connecting with a deeper current of your mood. And then being aware that your experience is one of change. So this is a really profound teaching. The intention is to help us to let go, so we're not grasping. If everything is moving, shifting, even however subtly, unfolding, transforming, there really is no point in grasping on too strongly. And then becoming aware of your breath. Next couple of exhales, take a sense of letting go with the exhale. And then we're going to float up on the inhale. So we're going to float up on the inhale. Okay. Again, we could stay longer there. But that'll do for now. I'd like you to lie down, so gently lower yourself to the floor, come into semi-supine. And what we're going to do now is a supported inversion. So I'd like you to have, like, yeah, it's asking a lot, isn't it, that people have got yoga bricks. But if you've got, ideally, a pile of bricks, and you put underneath your pelvis, you make the supported bridge. That's what we want, ideally. If you haven't got the bricks, doing your best there with some sort of firm cushions underneath the pelvis. It's definitely the pelvis that's supported, not the lower back. Okay, and then what we do is we gently, this is slightly active, this pose, so we gently open the back. Sorry, we open the spine, open the chest. It's like extending the spine. To help that, you can actually place your arms on the ground and deliberately lift the sternum in relation to the floor. Okay, so you're lifting the sternum away from the floor. So my upper back is slightly active, and then we're going to float one leg to the vertical and the other to the vertical. So we're looking at a very gentle, it's not really a yin pose. I mean, we could do this with the legs at the wall, but I'm just thinking not everybody's going to have an easy bit of wall available. So we're going to do it slightly more actively. So you're floating the legs over your pelvis. There's a sense of gently opening the chest. Do release your neck. This is sometimes called Viparita Karani. I use this a lot as an alternative to shoulder stand when I'm teaching. Certainly less experienced practitioners like shoulder stand is a really powerful pose for the body, for the neck area. This is way, way safer, I suppose. Okay, so there's really no, I mean, there is some work going on in the neck area, but it's like nothing compared to shoulder stand. Okay, so the neck is safe, in a safer position. Throat area is open. Your legs can be slightly active. So you're balancing your legs over your hips, feet together. They can also be apart. Probably feels more satisfactory to keep the feet together since it's stabilizing. And then the upper body gently, actively opening. Okay, palms up or palms down. Either is good. Some people like to get hold of the corners of the bricks. That's going to work for some people. Question of proportion, the length of arms, and so on. Breathing now. Okay, then bending the legs. One foot down, the other foot down. Lifting your pelvis, removing your support. And coming down to the floor for a moment into semi-supine again. From semi-supine, we're going to roll to one side. And we're going to bring the bolster back into place. This is one of my favorite poses for the upper back. So the bolster goes across your mat, and then I'm going to bring some bricks for the head. You could start off with 3. And the bolster wants to be going at the tips of the shoulder blades. So this is really like whenever I teach this live, as in with people in the room, I do have to check where the bolster goes, yeah, because some people will put it up around the neck. So don't do that. You don't want to have it up around the shoulders or the neck or the lower back. It needs to go just as a reference, which would be helpful if you wear like a bra. It's where the strap goes. They're sort of designed to go there as a support underneath the shoulder area, shoulder blade area. And the head can be supported. So it's like a supported fish. So the more flexibility you've got in your upper back, the lower the head can go. Okay. Now your feet, your legs can just cross. Or if you want to work into the pelvis, you could bring your feet together. And then the arms go out at shoulder height. So you're making like a T shape. So if you want more neutral legs, cross the legs, that's also fine. And then we ease back into this, allow the extension through the upper back. Okay, so I prefer to have my legs working a bit. You can also take your arms above the head. Depends on your body. I'm resting the arms onto the bricks. Depends on how much space there is around the shoulder. It should feel like a sweet spot where you're supporting. So there's a sense of gently opening. Again, the anterior face of the spine. What we're doing here is effectively flattening out the kyphosis of the upper back, at least temporarily. So it gives a sense of relief to compression on the inside of the spine, in the anterior face. Typically working, at a desk or driving. I did quite a bit of driving today. There's a sense of closing the chest down. So this does the opposite. And that isn't to say that we're trying to eliminate the curves in the spine. Yeah? So the curves are really there. They really need to be there. The neck curve, which is the lordosis, the kyphosis needs to be there. The lordosis of the lumbar spine needs to be there. It's just what we want is a sense of movement, mobility, ease, and strength. So this is a practice which is going to be promoting a sense of space and flexibility. It's not going to strengthen. Okay, so you really need to combine a yin practice with a more active practice, whether that's yoga or something else. So a yin practice really helps the body to become softer, sense of softness, and sense of yielding. So again, coming into an awareness of specific sensations. Where are they in your body? Where do you predominantly feel this pose? So one way I've talked about this before is like each pose has got like an offering for you. It's got a gift. So what's the gift of this pose? What's it offering you? What's it showing you? And that might be just a sense of sensations, offering you some sensations to anchor your awareness into, which will help ground your heart, mind, your attention, which of course is a really wonderful, precious gift in itself, being aware of ourselves. Okay, from here, so again, we could spend longer, but I'm gonna keep us moving. Soles the feet to the floor, if you're in the butterfly position. Now, I really wouldn't sit up to come out of this. That would not be a good idea. So what we do is we slide, keep the head low, the chest low, slide towards your feet very gradually, like a mixture of sliding and wriggling. And then your head is on the roll, and then you take the roll out the way. Okay. Coming into semi-supine. Okay, and then we're going to come into, this is in some ways a way of kind of mirroring what we did at the beginning of the sequence. I'd like us to bring both legs towards us. Now, it depends on your body. This is the way I like to do it. So I'm going to take my right forearm behind my legs. Not that my body, proportion allows me to do that. That doesn't work. You can take your right forearm onto the legs. We're going to move into supine twist. So whichever works for you, but the idea is to keep both shoulders down. And the gaze, I quite like to keep neutral. The neck spine, I like to keep neutral. So the gaze is going up. But you could turn the head the opposite way to the legs if you want. And another detail, which I probably should have said at the beginning, is to put a cushion or a brick between the legs. So often that creates a little bit of space. A brick or a cushion between the legs creates a sense of space in the pelvis, especially across the back of the pelvis, like the sacroiliac, which is one of those areas that really suffers. It's like a kind of, as they would say in Spanish, castigada. It's like an area that gets really beaten up. The back of the pelvis, like the sacrum, lower back, L5, S1, that connection between the pelvis and the lower back really suffers. So placing a cushion between the legs can be really give a sense of relief in the lower back. Some people, in fact, it's wise to sleep. If you've got a lot of low back pain, try sleeping with a cushion between your legs, and it can often help alleviate that pain in the lower back around the sacroiliac area. So we're releasing into a twist. So twists again, they're inviting the heart center to soften. You can release the space between the shoulder blades. And with an in-breath, I want you to float one of your legs up. So if you went to the right, float your left leg up. And then float across to the other side. So if you're wrapping, do try that. If wrapping doesn't work, you just place your left arm on top of the leg. And you can turn the head out or you can look up. I've said this before, but I've been playing with keeping the neck more neutral. Because actually in a twist, the area that we want to be focusing on is the thoracic area, not so much the neck area, which often gets overemphasized in twists. Everybody wants to look back. But actually what you want to be doing is softening and opening the thoracic area, which of course will free up the neck as well. So breathing into the twist on this side. Again, working with gravity. So with the yin practice, we're again and again and again yielding to the force of gravity and so surrendering to the floor. So really for this practice to work, you want to have a warm room and a warm floor to help you release into the floor. And then from here, I'm going to float one leg up. And then the other leg says no, like brusque movements coming back into semi-supine. And floating then your knees towards your chest again and take one hand onto each knee. We're going to take a movement called Apanasana. So as you exhale, float the knees towards you. And inhale, float the knees away from you. Very simple. Exhale, floating the knees towards you. Inhale, floating them away. We'll do that 8 or 10 times. Following your breath, so you'll inhale, floating the knees away. Okay, that's great. In terms of timing. Okay, so yeah, I just want to, I won't distract you from that. So as you inhale, floating the knees away. Exhale, floating the knees towards you. Do that 8 or 10 times. Okay, then when you're ready, we're gonna move into Shavasana. So that's like an adapted sequence there from, as I said, from Sarapasa. Just acknowledging that. So I've added in a few things at the beginning. So with the Shavasana, it's really important that you're not going to be cold. Okay, so I don't know what it's like where you are. Like over here, it feels like winter just arrived about a week ago. So, but put a bolster underneath your knees. Okay, so I'm just going to put a few layers up. And yeah, if you need a blanket on top of you, I'd like to do a short Shavasana, but I'd like us to go into a short meditation because for me, one of the interesting, or perhaps my main interest in the yin practice has been as a bridge between yoga and meditation. It's like somehow a halfway house practice. So it's a bit of both, and it's very powerful for that reason. Okay, so I'd like us to at least kind of go through that process of doing the yoga and then going into meditation, seeing how they're connected. But we're going to start off lying down. So I'd like you to, when you lie down, support the backs of the knees, so that helps to release the legs. And make sure more or less you've come into a straight line. And then there's 3 adjustments you can make on your spine. So the first one is to move the pelvis very subtly towards your feet. You can lift the pelvis, move the pelvis towards your feet. Sense of lengthening out your lower spine. Secondly is broadening the upper back. So I do that by doing that hugging that we did earlier. The eagle hug. And then release the arms. You can release the hands onto the body if you prefer, or to your sides. And then the third adjustment is to lengthen the neck. So it's a sense of picking the head up and moving it away from the shoulders. So the idea is that you feel that you're in a straight line. I mean, you might not be because of imbalances and so on, perceptual distortions and so on, but at least it feels even, okay? You could just check if you're really off visually. And then we're going to rest back into the floor for a few minutes. So we're going to spend 3 or 4 minutes. So not a really long Shavasana. If you want to stay in Shavasana, if you're feeling particularly tired or needing to lie down, then that's fine. You can stay here for a bit longer for the duration of the rest of the practice. But otherwise, we'll stay here for a few minutes, reconnecting with the whole body experience. Reconnecting with the sense of gravity moving down through your body. And feeling the body after that practice. So it will feel like you've released energy. There's a sense of vitality, almost like a kind of vibration in your body, like a humming. At least that's my experience. A sense of having moved. We've worked into connective tissues, muscles, ligament, tendon, the joints. Of course, from like a Chinese medicine point of view, we've been stimulating the meridians. So particularly the meridians associated with the upper back and the arms and shoulders. So it's the heart and lung channels, the large and small intestine channels. But in fact, we would have been working more like the back of the body, the bladder channel, for example. But anyway, feeling your body, what's really important in the end is your direct experience. So we're gently easing into our resting place here. Feeling the floor. And it might be that one area of the body really dominates your experience. So it might have brought up an area that's feeling particularly sensitive, or an area that's traumatized or damaged even. It might be coming into your awareness more strongly. Really to envelop that area in kindness, gentleness, It's a warm, intimate contact with that area in your own body. The process we can carry on, of course, deepening into, sort of resting into our own body just as it is. Allow you to open up again to a sense of the emotional field, the emotional landscape, a sense of your mood. So, not always, but usually there can be a sense of release, a sense of relief, sense of well-being as a consequence of a yoga practice. Not always, okay? You can have sessions where you get in contact with quite unpleasant or difficult experience. So not dismissing any part of our experience, but see if there is a sense of ease, well-being in your experience, and enjoying that, savoring that. You're also aware that our experience is one of change, continuous unfoldment in every sense, every part of our body, our experience, our heart, our mind is in constant motion, movement, transformation. And for a few moments, we're going to anchor into the breath practice, which is called Anapanasati, which is to say awareness of the in-breath and the out-breath. So Ana, breathing in, Pana, breathing out. Sati is awareness, mindfulness. Attention. So you might not want to move, so I don't want to push you to do that. So if you want to stay where you are for the next few minutes, that's fine. If you want to move into a meditation pose, that's also fine. So if you're going to move, doing that really gently without disturbing yourself too much, but you can roll to one side, bringing yourself into a supported sitting position. So when we say supported sitting, so it's like really easeful, no hard edges, as we say. So just for the last 5 minutes or so, I'd like us to come into meditation pose. So we're going to carry on with the process of being aware of the breath, the last few minutes of the session, with developing this intimacy with the in-breath and the out-breath. Incredibly simple practice, but incredibly difficult to do. So the invitation is there to become aware of the breath, anapanasati, letting the body breathe. Sometimes it's going to be short, sometimes long, sometimes more superficial, sometimes deep. We could say cultivating an intimate connection with the breath in the body. This can be profoundly calming, profoundly pleasurable. Sense of letting go of any tensions in the body. You could say the whole practice with this session has been one of softening, yielding to gravity. Now we're gently maintaining the spine in the vertical axis, sense of a clear, aligned spine. And your awareness to anchor into the breath. Really coming into this intimate connection with yourself. On one level, yeah, we can be aware that we've been practicing together, different parts of the world, different time zones even. There's a sense of practicing with others, but being intimately in contact with your own body, fully as is possible. Being aware of the sensations around the breath. And perhaps you could explore a sense that your whole body is breathing. I'd like us to once again become aware of space around us. The thing we can be aware of here is that those of us who've been joined us this evening for this, or this afternoon for this practice, sense of connecting with them. But then on a deeper level, being surrounded by all living beings, sense of breathing them in and breathing out the benefits of the practice, so that all living beings can benefit from this session of yoga, meditation on some level. Breathing in a sense of all living beings, breathing out a sense of kindness, well-wishing to all living beings.